As you see on the screen, I am Haniel. I'm Haniel Yu. You might recognize my name or you might recognize my face, but if you don't worry, I'll give you a short introduction about who I am. You might recognize me from a few places, like my family, my beautiful family over here. So yes, I've been raised here in church. I went through Wink, I went through youth, and now I'm a youth leader in the youth ministry. So yes, I've been serving in the youth ministry for about 3-4 years. I've been serving in the music ministry for 14 years. And I started when I was 6 years old. So if you do the math, yes, I'm 20 years old. So yes, I'm still young. I'm still a young kuya, young adult, yes. So enough about me. Time to go to the real reason why we're here, and it's this. Exile living. We started this series last week. Part 1 was last week, led by our very poggy kuya Elmer. But if you have not heard the series, don't worry. I'll do a short recap to make sure we're all on the same page. What is exile? Just to sum up, I mean, you can go search on Google. I'm probably using the same definition. But exile means you're either forced to leave your home or you are living in a foreign place because you cannot go home. So somehow you have left your home forced or you're living in a foreign place at the moment. Wherever you feel, you don't feel at home. Pretty much what exile is, to some extent, right? So maybe, I don't know about you guys, but you might feel, maybe you might relate with this to some extent. I know some people, they're from the Philippines and they come to Singapore to work. Imagine in the new environment, everybody is speaking differently. That's the feeling of living in a foreign place. That's what exile kind of is, right? But of course, exile to this extent is you're forced to leave your home. So it is a bit extreme, yes. But Kuya Elmer shared last week a beautiful story on Adam and Eve. They were exiled because they disobeyed God by eating the fruit, right? So, but in that story, Kuya Elmer revealed a very beautiful truth, which was this: God's mercy exists even in exile. Time for part 2. But before that, I would like to share a story of mine. This story happened 3 years ago. I was in college, a technical diploma college called ITE. It was like my first week of school. I was making friends. And this basically what happened in this story is I almost got expelled. Oh no. Parents, do you know this story? Yeah. So I actually almost got suspended / expelled because of this. I was making new friends. Finding my barkada. Oh, you're Pinoy. Oh, okay, let's be friends. Too much in the mood of being too funny. Maybe perhaps it offended someone. And this guy, he just ran up to me and punched me in the face. And I had a cut on my lip. I was like, oh no, I probably shouldn't have done that, right? Yeah. Normally when that happens to you, I guess one possibility is you might be in this crossroad like shown here. I had a choice. A split second, of course, you react, right? How long do I have before I react? Not long. And normally, when someone comes up and hits you, of course, you'd feel sad, angry, or anything, all these negative emotions. But do you ever feel compassion? But some people, maybe not the first thing on your mind. But as I was sitting here with my face like this, right? I had a choice. And something was bothering me. Something was telling me something, saying, Haniel, don't do it. Whatever it is you're going to do, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. The person in front of you right now needs your compassion and not your anger. So, very fortunately, I chose compassion. I decided to talk to him, and I was like, are you okay? Even though he punched me, I should be asking myself that question. But I'm like, are you okay? And then, of course, the teacher saw us and asked us to stay back and investigate what happened. And yes, it was all good. It's all a misunderstanding. He told me, I'm so sorry I punched you. I was also angry. So maybe on his own, he had his own crossroad to punch me or not, right? But fortunately, my compassion ended up in a very good friendship for the next 2 years before I graduated for the technical diploma. How about you, church? Have you been in a similar crossroad like I did? Was there a period of time where you were put in a position where you had to make a choice left or right, or east or west, as shown in the slide. Maybe it doesn't have to be anger. Maybe it doesn't have to be like anger or compassion. It can be trust or don't trust. It can be spend on this and don't spend on that. It can be forgive or resentful or hold a grudge, right? Someone in the Bible had a similar crossroad. In fact, a few crossroads of his own. And to commemorate Youth Day, we're going to talk about a very young person in the Bible. His name is Joseph. Joseph the Dreamer. Yes, you might know his story, but don't worry if you don't know this story, or not familiar with the story, I will cover it, well, briefly. You'll get the whole gist of the story by the end of today. If you're taking notes, the title of our conversation today is Hardship. Why hardship, you might ask? Well, if you know the story, maybe, perhaps you have an idea, because shipped, you know. So basically, to sum it up, Joseph also had a moment where he was exiled himself. And he had to live his life as an exile. I named it hardship because Joseph didn't really have a very fair life. A lot of the things he did was good, but then bad things still happened to him. So now we'll dive deeper into the story. As you can see in the slide, Genesis 39. So please, if you have your Bibles or e-Bibles, please turn to Genesis 39. And before I start the story, there is just one point I want you to take note throughout the story that may become more truer as you read through or as we go through the story together. And it's this: when we are true to God, He will lead us through. We might ask, what does being true mean? What does being true to God mean? Is it truth? Is it say things that are truthful? Is it genuine? Are we genuine? Is it real? We'll find out later. Of course, all these meanings can be true, can be applied. But Joseph in particular also had something to offer. And I want you also to see that how God leads Joseph through his life. So Joseph, young boy, 17 years old at the time, if I'm not wrong, 10 brothers. 10 brothers, so it's like, wow, all boys, right? So there's a period of time where the father, Jacob, also known as Israel, this guy Jacob, the father, really loved Joseph. Almost to the point like it's favoritism, because the coat kind of symbolizes that. So Jacob gave Joseph this colorful robe because he loves his son so much. And the brothers reacted not happy. Maybe if you can see on the screen, one of the brothers is folding his arms like this, right? He's probably thinking, where's my coat? How come Joseph gets a coat and I don't? What makes Joseph so special? I'm older, I have more hair, I'm stronger than Joseph. And it doesn't even stop there. Joseph has a dream, in fact, two dreams, that pretty much imply that the brothers are gonna bow down to him, right? Anybody here with younger siblings? Younger siblings, show hands. All right, let's see a few people. Imagine if your younger sibling tells you, one day you'll bow down to me. Kuya, ate, one day you'll bow down to me like this. Right, how would you react? No. Right? No. What are you doing? I'm your kuya and ate, what do you mean bow down to you? You're the bunso or whichever, right? So, you might imagine from this, the brothers didn't like what was happening or what they were hearing, so therefore, they maybe perhaps reacted like this. Yeah, and you disappointed Pikachu as well, and the monkey meme, you might recognize that. Talaga? Yabang mo ah. Ay, naku. Inis. Probably you might react like that. So, from this bitterness that was coming within the brothers, they decided to do the most brotherly loving thing in the world that a brother would do for their other brother. They tried to kill him. Right? Isn't that extreme? To be honest, I wonder how Joseph must have been, how annoying Joseph must have been, or how mayabang, well, they didn't specifically say arrogant, but how arrogant must he be to the point that the brothers would do this to him. Right? Isn't that crazy? Of course, if Joseph died that night, then, okay, closing prayer na. Right? It didn't happen that way. Fortunately, one of the brothers, also known as Reuben, intervened and said, maybe it's not a good idea, right? Maybe. So they decided to sell him as a slave. The two Ishmaelites that were there, and they were on the way somewhere. Let's take a pause here for a bit and also talk about Joseph. I wonder how he must be feeling. Because at this point in time, Joseph was exiled. And I would imagine Joseph waking up, "Good morning, pa. Good morning, ma. Have you eaten na?" And then suddenly, "Kuya, wala, we're gonna cry today." Kuya, don't do this to me. Kuya, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, so it is sad. Actually, it really is sad. I mean, it does take me a while to emote from reading, but I really felt hurt by what happened to Joseph. Because that could have happened so fast. Just suddenly a normal day, and then bam, he never even got to say bye to his father. So now we are going to tackle the story, what happens next, because Joseph survives this night, right? That's a good thing. At the very least, the bare minimum is a good thing. So we're going to dive deeper into the story of Genesis 39, which is what happens after he's been sold to slavery. Now, Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Do you know how far that is from where he's from? So Joseph was from Canaan and walked all the way to Egypt, which I did some research. It's about 11 days of walking. If I'm not wrong, it is straight 11 days. So if you were to consider sleeping, stop over, then perhaps it's 2 or 3 weeks. And keep in mind, Joseph had to walk this long, thinking about, what just happened to me? I thought I was cool, I had a coat and everything. Papa loved me very much. Suddenly, right? All the way to Egypt. This is just the introduction of Joseph. So this is what happens next. Potiphar, this man, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials. Cool, right? Pharaoh's officials. Okay. So he's pretty high rank, he's pretty recognized guy, pretty strong guy, I'd imagine. He's the captain of the guard. This man bought Joseph from the Ishmaelites who were taking him to Egypt, who had taken him there. So now we know where Joseph is. This is what happens next. Keep in mind this phrase, because it's going to appear a few times in the story. The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph. That means something good's going to happen, right? The Lord's with you. Oh, I bet something's good's going to happen. Yes. Actually, yes. So that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. Oh, you're a slave now, you're living inside my house. I don't know where Joseph was staying beforehand, or maybe he was already staying in the house, but that's not the point. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything that he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes, Potiphar's eyes, and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household. That's a pretty big promotion, if you ask me, from a slave. And suddenly now, oh, Joseph, you're my assistant now. You take care of my house, right? Be in charge of my house. But there's something beautiful here, because the master, Potiphar, saw Joseph, that the Lord was with Joseph. So church, what do you think? What do you think Joseph must have been like for the master to see him that way? Because surely Joseph had to behave in some way, in some sort of vibe, right, youth? In some sort of way, Joseph had to behave so well, be responsible, have the integrity, have the faith, the courage, the obedience as a slave, or maybe he's quick to respond to Potiphar. I don't know Potiphar's faith, if it's the same, because he's an Egyptian. All the way to the point that Potiphar saw that the Lord was with him. Potiphar entrusted Joseph to care for everything he owned. And I will show right now how strong is this entrusted, because in this next verse, with Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Imagine waking up every morning, not thinking about your bills, not thinking about your grades, your school, your work, or your drama with your colleagues, your drama with your friends, and things like that. You're only worried about, what do I eat? I want tinola. Okay, right? It's to that point. That's how Joseph was so good at his job, to the point that Potiphar was just a free man, literally. Of course, he has his duties, but yes, he didn't concern himself with anything. Let's pay attention to what happens next, because something fishy is going to happen. Something it's going to be some tension here. And this is what happens. Now Joseph was well-built and handsome. Patay. Oh no. That's the problem. No, he's too handsome. Right? Actually, When in the Bible do they call a person handsome? Last I recall David and Joseph. Of course, if there's more, I do want to know. But there's not a lot of people that are called handsome. So what does that mean, right? I think Joseph is probably really handsome. This is what happens. Pretty fishy. And after a while, because Joseph was so handsome, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." Oh no. Yun pala kasi is handsome eh. Ano ba yan? Joseph is put in a situation like this. He's now in a crossroad ready to give in to temptation or flee, right? Let's pay attention again to what Joseph does because we are getting to know Joseph already. He's a pretty good guy, right? What will he do here? Does he maintain his integrity? Does he maintain his faith? Does he have the strong will? Does he rely on God? He refused. Good, right? Very good, Joseph. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, "My master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care." By the way, this is not just a, "Nah, I'm good," right? "Nah, next time, hala." No, it wasn't just a, "Nah, I don't think it's a good idea." It's, "No, because your master trusts me. I have a job to do. I'm an attendant to your husband. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" That's a pretty strong no if you ask me, right? It's a pretty strong no. Because this wasn't just, "Nah, I'm good. It's okay. I'm too handsome for you." Sorry. Right? It wasn't just that. "No, your husband trusts me. I have a job to do. No, I will not sin against God. How could I do such a thing?" Joseph acknowledged his job, acknowledged his responsibilities, no shortcuts, acknowledged his master, and acknowledged his faith. And is this the only time this happened? No, fortunately not. And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, yes, day after day. It didn't just happen once, it happened many times. I don't know how long day after a day is, but it's really like more than 4 or 5 days, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month. And maybe follow what day after day. It could last until a year, but hopefully not, right? That means Potiphar's wife is very persistent, right? But Joseph still refused. He refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Joseph took an extra step, right? Extra step. Okay, no, I have my faith, I have my responsibility. But no, Joseph, every day, is probably trying to avoid Potiphar's wife. Oh, she's there, okay. I'm gonna pretend to go to the toilet and wait there for a while. He refused to even be with her until one day where Potiphar's wife does get close one more time. One day, he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants were inside. So Potiphar's wife, she caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me one more time." And I would imagine Joseph just like, "Okay, nobody's here? Okay." And then Potiphar's like, right? And then, by the code, you know? Well, I mean, obviously, I don't think it would be so aggressive, but Potiphar's wife did get close and asked again, "Come to bed with me." This is what Joseph did. He ran out of the house, literally ran, but left his cloak in her hand. There's no time for like, no, give it back. He just ran, even though he became maybe half naked from that. Joseph did the right thing throughout. And don't forget, he came from Canaan, separated from his family, and now he's in Egypt as a slave. And throughout, he stayed true and never once questioned God. He didn't go like, "Lord, are you really God if you let this happen to me?" No. Joseph just excelled wherever he was. He trusted God. And the Lord blessed him to be able to be his attendant and then be in charge and be trusted. Of course, until he's super handsome that, sometimes in life, right? Poggy problems, right? And that's why we know from this whole story of Joseph so far, we know that when we are true to God, He will lead us through. Joseph did everything right, correct? Joseph did everything right. But does that mean the outcome would be, is it a transactional thing? Okay, if I'm true to God, will I be forever successful, forever prosperous? Do I get all the things I want? Does that mean when I'm true to God, there won't be any problems? There won't be any storms or trials? Temptations, yes, because we just saw it. But does that mean that it's a transactional thing? No. There will still be storms in our life. Bad things still can happen. Unfair things still can happen. What happens to Joseph next is pretty sad because, of course, if you're following the chapter right now, you can read ahead, but I'll explain briefly what happens next. Potiphar's wife, with the cloak, with Joseph's cloak in her hand, decides to turn the tables. So check out the series that was last month. But yes, turn the tables on Joseph and made it look like it was as if Joseph was pursuing Potiphar's wife. Oh no, doesn't sound good, right? Patay, when your wife complains to your husband, you know your husband has to listen, right? So when his master heard the story that his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me," he burned with anger. And Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. What did Joseph do wrong? Absolutely nothing. And yet, he sat here thinking, again, this is probably the same thing he was thinking about when he was separated from his family. What happened? What did I do? Have you been in a situation like this, church? Something similar? Of course, hopefully, not to the extent that you end up in prison, but maybe perhaps you've been doing good all your life or all this week, and yet it didn't just turn out well for you. Something happened and it was just unfair. You were framed or you were accused wrongly, even though you were doing the right thing. And of course, this was not explicitly mentioned in the Bible, but I do imagine that Joseph, just to humanize him a little more, I do imagine that he's probably thinking about his life. All these moments, the dream that felt like it was God's promise to him, and suddenly the brothers tried to kill him, and then suddenly I'm a slave, and now I'm sold to this guy, Potiphar, who his wife tried to be so persistent with me, and I ran away, I stayed faithful, he protected Potiphar's marriage with Potiphar's wife. He's probably thinking about that. It hurts. You're probably so confused. You're probably so, like, literally at rock bottom because it's just rocks in the prison. But then, in this story, there's such a beautiful thing that happens here. But while Joseph was there in the prison, church, I want you to read the red highlighted phrase, everybody, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. The Lord was with him. The Lord still pulls through, even in the good times and in the bad times. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Well, of course, for the prison warden, it could be the same thing, that the prison warden saw Joseph, that the Lord was with him too. It could be. Or maybe just Joseph was such a behaved prisoner, maybe praying, I don't know. He seemed very trustworthy to the point that the prison warden decides to trust him. By the way, what happens next is Joseph starts to take care of the prison alongside warden, right? So it's just the same, like Joseph is so trustworthy, he's so good, people see that he's with him and he's going up. But of course, if you know the rest of the story, he somehow promotes to Pharaoh's second in command. That's a much higher rank than Potiphar, by the way. Second in command. Of course, you want to know how that happens, please read. It's really good. And this is also because Joseph was able to interpret dreams and see a famine coming their way. And therefore, he was tasked to prepare for the famine. And in this time phase, the same brothers that tried to kill Joseph and sold Joseph for just the price of a slave comes to Egypt. And Joseph is there like, what do I do? He's probably facing his crossroad on his own. Do I forgive them? Do I help them because the famine is coming? Or do I take revenge because I didn't get to say bye to my father. I don't know if my father is still alive. I lost everything. And when I went to Egypt, I lost everything. So of course in this story, Joseph, such a kind-hearted man, he decides to forgive in the utmost tears, as you see, that Joseph even went somewhere to cry and he was wailing. At the end, Joseph forgave them, and The father was still alive. Joseph reunited with the father, and all was great. Joseph had a family, had kids, and then, and that's the end of Joseph's life. He lived this whole full life. But is the story of Joseph really about the success? Of course, we ought to know what happens, right? It's how the next story, when we link to Moses also, is it really about the success? Is it really about, okay, Joseph had a redemption story, that's it? Is it all about that? No. It's what happens during the story. And it happened here. It happened here. It was this. The Lord was with Joseph. Master saw that the Lord was with him. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. In another verse that I didn't show today, but it's there. The Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. That's what the story of Joseph is about. It's the journey. Who was he with the entire time? And it's amazing because even in the good times, the Lord was with him. Even in the bad times, the Lord was still with him. In Joseph's end, of course, the Lord will be with us, yes. But it's up to us how we receive that or how we reap the benefits of that. And to do that, Joseph stayed true. Joseph stayed true to God. Joseph stayed true when he refused. Joseph stayed true when he acknowledged God in times of temptation. He was staying true because he did not question God. He did not blame God for anything that was happening to him. Joseph stayed true throughout. No shortcuts, obeying his master, acknowledging his faith. His faith was strong. Even when life doesn't go as planned, Joseph still chooses to excel wherever he is because he acknowledges that the Lord is with him. Joseph was a good example. However, there was a perfect example, and his name is Jesus. In fact, Jesus is so perfect to the point he's the truth. He is the truth. Jesus had his own crossroad. Well, the temptation in the wilderness, for example, or the garden of Gethsemane, which I feel is the ultimate crossroad for mankind's sake, right? And it was in that garden where Jesus decided, not my will, but yours be done. And I'm sure Jesus had his own journey of 30 plus years, especially for Joseph. He was able to reap the benefits from his faith, his trueness, his genuine faith. Therefore, everything that God gave Joseph, guidance, wisdom, blessing, prospering him in times where he needs it, God was able to lead him through, even when bad things happen, or good things, especially good things. We might forget sometimes when good things happen to us, we might not acknowledge God because everything's okay, right? But no, God is still with you, even in the good times. And that's why when we are true to God, He will lead us through. And Paul in Romans reminds us something very beautiful regarding this as well. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him. Who love Him. That's being true. How could you love God and not be true? It's the same. If you're true to God, you love Him. Definitely. All things. What does all things mean? All things? Yeah, all things. But does it mean that all things are good? No. All things God works for the good of those who are true, those who love Him, and those who acknowledge Him, and who have been called according to His purpose. This is not just, okay, love you, bro. No, God has something for you, something good for you. God wants to work in you. God wants to achieve something in you. You have a purpose. And that's why Joseph ended Genesis very beautifully. He said this, "You planned to do a bad thing to me, but God planned it for good." Of course, in Joseph, the stakes are much higher. Because of famine, people were about to die. But because Joseph stayed true throughout his journey, good times and the bad times, it happened so that many people are kept alive, should be kept alive, as they are today. Many thousands and thousands of people survived the famine because of Joseph. Or well, if you really see the bigger picture, because of God, right? And that's why when we are true to God, He will lead us through. How do we be true, brothers and sisters? Young people, how do we be true? We're in the modern day right now. There's a lot of things influencing us in the internet. We can easily just stray away. How are we being true? Is it telling the truth? Yeah, of course. Is it being genuine? Yes, most definitely. Is it loving God? Yes. Being true just means God matters to you. God matters to you, and your faith matters. Your growth, your relationship with God matters. God is real to you, that you don't want to sin against Him, that you want to rely on Him. To be able to reap the benefits of God leading us through, we have to be true. If you all read James, it also says something similar. When we face trials of many kinds, consider it pure joy, right? Why? Pure joy for trials? Sounds weird, right? Imagine going through something terrible and you're like, right? No, of course it sounds weird, but yes, that's what God's trying to say. That's what God's trying to say. Consider it pure joy because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. You will become mature and complete when perseverance finishes its work, and therefore you will not lack anything. To conclude, to be able to let God lead us through anything in life, we have to be true to God. Is it one time? Okay, I'm true. Okay, bye-bye. No, every day we have to continue to choose to be true. It's a choice you make every day. It's a choice you make when we're faced in crossroads, especially when consequences are bound to happen, depending on what you choose. We have to be true in everything we do. So, church, I want to put you in a position here. Maybe, perhaps, in your life, you can see these words on the side in your life, what this crossroads would look like for you. Whether it's to trust something or don't, to follow something or to not follow something. Is it to be influenced by something or not? Is it to spend on this? Did I say that already? Yes. But most importantly, in our life, of course, other than to believe in God or don't, believe in Jesus or don't. But as we are all here, are we going to choose to be true to God? Or are we going to be our own God? What is being your own God? Taking matters to your own hands. Finding what good and evil is for yourself. If it feels right, it's right. So being your own God is. Being true to God, you have a standard. You have a moral standard. Challenge you guys today, church, brothers and sisters. My challenge for you today is to be true to God. Choose to be true. Start now. It's okay if you haven't. It's not too late to start being true. But we have to start someday. In fact, we should start now. While we still can. Right? At some point, Jesus comes and establishes His new kingdom here. And all of us as exiles will find our home. But while we're away, while we're in exile, be true to God until we get home. So there's this beautiful song that the music ministry will sing for us today. I heard this song and I meditated through the song and I realized that this song is an opportunity to surrender to God, to be true, to be real, to be genuine, to believe. John 3:16, to believe, is it just, okay, I believe it happened? No, there's so much more. It has to show in us. It has to reflect in us. It has to be seen by other people. That's how you know it's true. If people see like, hey, I think I see God in you. I see how you act. I'm inspired. Then you know you're really being true. So choose to be true. Whatever it takes, let the Lord reveal to you what you need to do to start being true now. So may the Lord strengthen us as we receive these benefits from being true, as we are being led through our entire life. Let us continue to be true so that we are able to reap all the benefits that God is going to give us. Because God loves you, God will be there for you, God will lead you through anything, good and bad. Lord, we learn from Joseph that we need to be true to you. We need you to matter to us. Lord, reveal to us what it takes to be true. Reveal to us what we need to do. What is lacking in our life that is not true to you. Reveal to us what are we doing, anything in our hearts or anything of our actions that are going against you. Humble us, O Lord, to realize that you are enough, we aren't enough on our own. And we ought to stay true to you until we get home, when you come again and establish your kingdom here completely.